Hi, my name's Janelle Demetrio. Welcome to the first episode of Magis Moments, Deepening Our Relationship with Christ. Help me, Lord, to live in your love. This was a responsorial psalm at a recent Mass I attended here at Notre Dame. I remember it pretty clearly because I remember it put a smile on my face and joy in my heart to recite those words. So simple and so beautiful. Help me, Lord, to live in your love. For today's Magis Moments, I'd like to consider how we can go beyond just saying something like that that's so simple and beautiful, and actually put a little more into how we can be more active in living in God's love. This sounds a little bit abstract and lofty, living in God's love. What does that mean? But if we distill it down into Ignatian Spirituality's premise that God is in everything, and by his nature, God is love, thereby God's love is in everything, not just in the major milestones in our lives, not just in the sacraments or at church, but deeply woven into the fabric of our very being, in our relationships, in our decision making, in those people in our lives, in the suffering in our lives, in the suffering of others. God's love is everywhere. So for today, I'm going to give you some practical exercises that you can do to do that little more, that little magis to deepen your relationship with Christ. One exercise, these are all pretty simple and things you may already be doing. One simple exercise is simply to sit in the midst of someone that you care for deeply without feeling the need to speak, but simply to gaze at them or to deeply listen to them and to feel in your own heart space that depth of love and care that you have for them. This is the same depth and love of care that our God has for us, and being aware of that in our hearts is living in God's love. A second exercise, as you're running around in your day and doing your errands, when we see someone cross our path who we know or maybe who is a stranger to us, looking up into that person's eyes, giving them a kind word or doing a kind deed, maybe holding a door open for them. These ways that we connect to each other with a sense of presence and awareness are other ways to live in God's love. Another great exercise at this time of year is to get outdoors, to immerse yourselves in nature, to look up at the sky, to see the vastness and the variety of the clouds, to look down at the earth and see the plush green saturated by the summer's rains, to look all around you, seeing the colors and the shifting colors, all of these ways that God's love is deeply embedded in his creation. To simply be aware of that and present with that is living in God's love. One final practice that might be a little more challenging is, as we look at the suffering in our lives or the suffering around the world, to simply notice the response that we can see others giving generously their time, their money, uniting with each other in support, and even in our own hearts we can feel that growing compassion and understanding of what's going on in other people's lives. So these are some ways to really fully immerse ourselves and practice living in God's love. Hopefully one of these practices spoke to you. Thank you so much for tuning in.